My name is Matt McFarland, and I teach at Templeton Middle School, and I teach 8th grade history and the leadership class. We see students all the time with cell phones. We see them using computers a lot, cameras, digital still cameras and digital video cameras. Students like to create, they like to engage, they like to build, they like to remix, they like to make their own things. And when we came across Moodle and saw all of the different things that it had available, we thought this is going to be a perfect way to reach digital learners today with history content, or really any kind of content. For a teacher, I think it really gives us the opportunity as teachers to see what did our students really understand. Through forums, through one of the elements called choices, where the students have an opportunity to choose, select what they think, or which side they think was right, or what they would do in that case. You really get an opportunity to see not just what you told the students, but what did they hear? And what can they now do with it? Can they connect the dots between something that happened in the past and something today? And they get that from interacting not only with the teacher, but also with each other.
My favorite thing about Moodle is that on the forums that Mr. Mack assigns us, that as a classmate, I can interact with my class and see what their thought on the subject.
So I like that it's easier to access all of my personal information, and it's a lot easier to study, and it's helped me develop better learning and studying skills because it's all my information is right at the click of a button.
Moodle has a great testing feature. My students love it because the way I have my testing set up in terms of traditional assessment, the students know right away, how did I do on the test? I mean, instantly they get feedback. But beyond that, teachers can give students the opportunity to select another choice. The computer can say, you know what, you missed that answer, and now you're going to, there's a point deduction, but what is your next answer? And it gives, sometimes students say, I know it's one of these two answers. And with traditional testing, if they choose wrong, they've missed the entire thing, when actually they knew, at least they knew part of it. So that's part of it with that sort of assessment. But assessing can take a lot of different forms. Like, my students love forums, and I can see when students are discussing things, they're not necessarily discussing with me, but they're discussing them with students in their own class and students in other classes. And you can see by what they're writing how much they actually understood, because some students can tell you back what you said, but it's not necessarily an idea that they own for themselves. And as they have to write them out in forums or post them in journals, you can see really the depth of understanding that they have.
Well, I really like that we're able to take our tests on the computer, and you can submit the answers instantly, and you know right what you got. And also you can go back and if you got one problem wrong, you can change back the answer and get partial credit for one of the answers. So let's say there was a 30 question test and you missed one, you can have a 29.7 if you got it right your second submission. So that's really nice. And there's lots of forums that you can submit on, and you can see what other periods throughout the day have submitted. And we also have polls where you can vote on a different option, whether this one's kind of obvious, but whether you support slavery or don't, and you can vote on whether it was just or unjust, and you can see what other people have. Or there's closed polls where you can't see what other people voted, but you'll see the majority of the 8th grade voted for this or this. So I really like that.
With the forums, I see everything that they've posted, and I see all the people that have responded to them. As a teacher, I have the ability to edit, to block out certain things if I choose to do that. And I really haven't had to do that. The students have been very appropriate in their answers. They have really shown me clearly what they understood and what they didn't understand. For a teacher assessing those things, in the journal I get a whole list straight down the line. The way I've set it up is I can see my students by class, so I can read through quickly what each student has said in a particular class, or I can see all of my students in general.
I probably have a forum where you can post what you think about a chapter, and you and your friends can comment and agree and disagree on certain things. And also they have easy study techniques such as flashcards chapter review. You can look over your quizzes, see what you missed, and you can correct quizzes and stuff.
One good thing for me has been, once I have it on Moodle, I can make it invisible and just bring it back up next year. So I have all of the things that I use, podcasts, PowerPoints, are all right there. I can have the kids see it anytime I want, and I can also take it away whenever I want. That's been helpful for me. It's like a virtual file cabinet of stuff that I don't have to worry about losing or misplacing, and always being able to turn it on or turn it off and make it hidden or not. We all know as teachers we need to give students certain understanding. There's important content words, there's themes, there's ideas, there's names and dates and places, there's all those stuff that students still need. So in terms of preparing, that doesn't change. But what does happen is, I see that it's kind of like an art teacher who teaches someone how to paint, and they take the paint out and then they let the students go from there, and we're amazed at what they paint. So in terms of my class, we might talk about some particular revolution that happened, and then have the students talk it out which side was really at fault. And as they talk it out amongst each other, they're posting things on forums, or they're writing things in journals, and that's something that I don't have to prepare. I just start the ball rolling and then see where the students take it. I might have them, the next day after a forum, I'll put all the forums up and we'll choose certain people's to read, and then whether they're in that class or not, it gives them an opportunity to see what other people think, and then I'll say, okay, who agrees with that, who disagrees with that? If the person's in the class, then I'll have them explain anything else they have to, and it provides a forum and jumping off place for discussion that normally I haven't had.
Moodle is, I'm not really like a technological person, but when I come to school and I learn about stuff like that, I think that like helps me a lot more with my education, because it's faster, and when we take our quizzes, it's a lot easier to like figure out what your grade is, and I like how it gives you a chance to like try the question again, so you don't just permanently miss it. You have that chance to get like 0.6 points out of 1 or something. And I like how the forums and people get to like communicate with each other, like even when we're not at school, and we can like kind of point things out to each other, and I think that's really cool because it's really fast and it's pretty easy to do that.
Well, I like Moodle because it saves paper, and so instead of our teacher handing out quizzes and tests, we can take them on the computer, and also we can access like a lot of different things, like we can study for quizzes and tests on that, and then the quiet people in class that normally wouldn't raise their hand, they can say their thoughts on it, so that's good.
You know, the great thing about forums, and my students really love these, and you can do them a lot of different ways. You can, I make my students one form of forum, I have them post their comments and they have to respond to a couple other people. And the great thing about that is we all know that there's certain students that don't like to raise their hand. In fact, I read some educational research that said on average each student they ask one question every 10 hours. But I don't find that in my class, because with forums they're asking questions all the time and they're answering other people's questions. Sometimes I use forums where I will have some of my students who want to go more in depth. They will define a key term, and there's a place on Moodle where you can search forums. So if somebody says, boy, I don't know what that word means, they can search the forum, and every place in a forum where that word is mentioned, it comes up. And it gives the opportunity for the students to actually become teachers to each other. Students are now interacting with people in other classes, and it broadens the length of the school day. No longer you can find just a 45-minute period, or an hour and a half depending on your school district, but people, I can see the time they post, and people are talking long into the night, posting their ideas, and conversing back and forth why they think this is right and they think that's wrong. So it really shows a depth of understanding that they might have had without Moodle, but I wouldn't have known. Students have adapted really well. They are used to using computers. honestly, if there's ever a problem that one student has, there's usually another student that's already conquered that problem. It's so easy to use, so intuitive. Really, once you get the student logged in, they pretty much take it from there. I mean, you give them the assignment. There's different forums and journals and things like that where students, if they knew how, could post pictures to show what they've learned. I didn't tell them how to do it, but all of a sudden I saw pictures started showing up. Didn't tell people how to change their profile picture, but they're used to doing that on so many different social medias. They can do that. They find ways around things that other people might have had problems with. Absolutely no problem adapting to it. It's for them second nature.
It's kind of cool to check out different pictures of people. Sometimes they'll change their profile picture or they'll put stuff on their profile, and there's the forums, and you end up talking with your classmates.
One of the things that's been really helpful for students, especially students who have medical issues or traveling, is it gives them the opportunity to stay up with what's going on in class. I have students that are on vacation that log in and take tests while they're gone. They can access homework assignments, which you could do on a normal web page, but with Moodle, they can still participate in forums. They can still be part of the discussion of the class, even though they're not physically in the class. So that's definitely a benefit.
Moodle is awesome because I can, when I'm sick or out of town with family, I can take quizzes online because all I have to do is log on. And by using Moodle, it also helps me stay connected with the rest of my class.
Teachers who teach sort of the chalk and talk way, where they're up in front and they're talking the entire length of the period, whatever that is, that to me takes a lot more prep, and I think research would show that that doesn't bring about the best learning. I think the more that students are engaged, interacting with each other and with whatever curriculum you're teaching, I think there's more depth of insight and understanding, and that comes about with Moodle. It makes it so it's a lot less. There's the prep time, there's still the prep time, but in terms of the kids interacting with it, that's less of me and more of them, and there's a richness that the students get when they're interacting with it instead of just listening.
And I really like Moodle because it's easy and convenient for me to access at home, and if I leave a paper in class, it's waiting for me online. And there are a lot of helpful study aids like the PowerPoints and the podcasts and links that get me ready for tests.
Well, it's kind of confusing at times because it's just so many buttons you have to push to go to different places, and some people don't have computers at home, so paper would kind of be easier to get your homework, but then it's also really good because it's easier for us to do our own homework because we don't have papers everywhere. It's just different. It just depends on the person you are, I guess.
I think we all admit that different students have different learning styles, and so what Moodle has allowed me to do, I can teach to all of those particular learning styles. My students can listen to podcasts for those that are auditory learners. Visual learners, they can see PowerPoints that are created. Kinesthetic learners, it's a little more challenging with Moodle, right? But in terms of auditory and visual learners, it gives them the opportunity to learn in whatever style best suits them. And for me, that's really helped because it's forced me to realize that not all students are the same. And as I recognize that students are different and I use the different tools that Moodle has, it gives me the opportunity to do the job that I'm supposed to do, which is teach all of my students. Some learn in different ways, and Moodle gives us the opportunity to use those different tools. Just because you don't have a lab, for me a lab has been ideal, but just because you don't have a lab doesn't mean that you can't use Moodle, because all of the things that my students like the best, which are the forums, the expressing themselves, the sharing their thoughts and answering questions after they've had time to think about it, having a place to store their homework, turning things in digitally, all those sorts of things can still be done at home. The only problem you would have is for students who don't have access to that. But that number is getting so much smaller that before long, that's not going to be an issue at all.
I like all the applications that it has and its programs and how it's so easy to access. Like with today's technology progressing so quickly, being on the computer is just less time and less hassle. I enjoy watching the podcasts and creating my own lessons and doing all the cool stuff that's on Moodle.
Recently, our teacher started what he calls a wiki. So it's basically like a built-in study guide that you do as you're doing your homework. And I think that's so cool, because then it's just less time that we have to worry about, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to study? We just have to go on Moodle at home even, and we can just click on it and be like, okay, here's my study guide. It was easy as that. And I think that's really cool.
The students they're more engaged, they're more interactive. Students today spend so much time with screen media. They're used to creating, they're used to editing, they're used to making for themselves. And Moodle gives them the opportunity through wikis, through forums, through journals, to express themselves in ways that maybe previous generations didn't or didn't need to. This generation, that's what they're all about. And Moodle benefits the students in that way.